What if you had the opportunity to win life-changing money, and all you had to do was defeat high school students in intense sports and mind games? Genius students from all around the world attend a Selective international high school in Canberra, Australia called Flora High School. They are divided into 7 houses named after Australian flowers: Banksia, Callistemon, Darwinia, Eucalyptus, Fern, Grevillea and Hakea. Houses are seeded alphabetically in an elimination bracket tournament, and in each matchup, houses play against each other in a best of 7 games. These games require either 5 representatives from each house, or the house as a whole, and they could be athletic-based, academic-based, or a mix of both. Winners move forward to the next round, while losers are eliminated, and the last house standing wins a trophy and a hefty cash prize. Seems fair, right? However, each year there is always one house that is accelerated, meaning that it contains the top 14% of students in the year level. They've won every year since the school was founded. But will this streak come to an end after Lyam Rigodon, a boy who can bring out the best in his teammates, ends up in a house full of students with questionable traits? One! I yelled out to my teammates to indicate what play to run. As the point guard, it was my job to run the offense and decide the best way for our team to score. 2 seconds earlier, my power forward inbounded the ball to me from the end line, and 3 seconds later, I crossed the half-court line uncontested. Defense! Doom doom doom! Defense! Doom doom doom! Chanted half the crowd. Guarding me was the opposing team point guard who was desperate to shut me down. He stood on top of the key waiting. His feet were planted a shoulder width apart, his knees were slightly bent, and his left hand was placed on his left knee while his right forearm wiped the sweat off his forehead. He was almost out of breath. "Bring it on!" he shouted. I stopped 1 meter in front of him and kept dribbling until everyone was at their positions. Once they were, it was time. "Catch me if you can," I said with a sneer. I bounced past the ball to my shooting guard on the left wing of the 3-point line and sidestepped my defender. I bolted to the paint and U-turned around my center at the right post to lose him, but he was a step behind. Coming from the left corner and dashing towards the paint to meet me was my small forward. We interlocked our left arms and performed a quick do-si-do to alter my course towards the right wing of the 3-point line. He was now further behind. But it wasn't over. I ran past my power forward who quickly set up a screen, ending any way of him reaching me. I was given the ball and an easy open 3. Bang! The commentator projected on a loudspeaker. "From downtown, number 12! The crowd roared and I celebrated with a little shimmy of my shoulders. "The game is now 96-all, the second commentator continued. "It's neck and neck. Can the Darwinia basketball club make a comeback after a huge deficit?" 4th quarter was going well. We had finally been able to catch up and our team had not been missing any shots for a while. We were so close to winning the basketball championship. All we had to do now was make sure they didn't score within the next 24 seconds. "Let's head back to defense, guys," I communicated to my teammates. Just before we could though, the ball flew past me. My eyes widened. Oh no. The other team's counter-attack was already in motion. Not long after I scored, their power forward inbounded the ball to their point guard near the baseline. The point guard chest passed to their center at the half-court line. Their center baseball passed to their shooting guard at the 3-point line, and their shooting guard bounced past their small forward driving to the paint. This happened all within a matter of 2 seconds. Their small forward finished with a monstrous 2-handed dunk. "Ah!" he shouted tongue out as he hung from the ring to show off. Their play was beautiful. The crowd knew it, the commentators knew it, everyone was stunned, and it was silent. Then, the crowd erupted. "Can you believe what we just saw?" one commentator asked. "No, I cannot," the other commentator answered. "This might just be the play of the day." The crowd's sudden eruption interrupted our coach's relaxation. He had been laying back on the bench with his eyes closed and his hands behind his head. He was resting like he was on vacation. I could hear murmurs from the crowd about him being so lousy, and honestly, I agreed with them. "Why is he doing nothing over there?" someone in the crowd complained. "I know, right? What a lousy coach," someone else responded. Our coach peeked with one eye. He checked the scoreboard, and after noticing we were trailing by 2, he hurriedly signaled a T to the referee for a timeout. The referee blew his whistle. "Timeout," he announced. On my way to the bench, I saw the other team's point guard trading words with my power forward. "Why don't you actually try making a shot?" he snickered. "What was that?" my power forward responded aggressively. "Say that again." "If you spent less time attacking us, then maybe you'd be able to score again," he continued to taunt. My power forward was visibly triggered, and he was tempted to grab him by the jersey, but I put a stop to it before it got any worse. "Hey, let's go," I said to him. He was furious, but he held it in, turned around and walked away. The other team's point guard eyed him with a smug look, pleased that his comment got to him. "Huddle up everyone," our coach instructed. The 5 of us who were on the court formed a semicircle around him. "We're down 2, but it's fine. We have the final possession," he assured. "I want you boys to go for a 3. Your bodies won't be able to handle overtime." He was right. We were only 10 to 12 years old. There was no way we could handle any more playing time. Our coach turned to me. "How do you want to play this?" he asked. As the captain, it was my responsibility to find a way to lead our team to victory, especially in clutch moments like this. So ultimately, I had the final say on how things played out. "Okay guys, here's the plan. Everyone glanced at me as I took charge. We'll run the play that gets me open at the 3, I continued. You give me the ball and I will shoot. Everyone seemed to agree. Everyone except one. No, a voice opposed. It was Christopher Tapat, our team's power forward. He still seemed irritated by what the point guard and the other team had said to him. I want to shoot it, he said. I want to be the one that gives him the final blow. I don't know about that. I was hesitant. I wasn't sure if that was the best move. Nevertheless, he walked over and stood in front of me. Please, Liam, we've trained together over the past year. You've even helped me improve my 3-point shooting, remember? He pleaded his case to me. It was true. In the beginning, he was shooting 2 out of 10 from the 3-point field goal, but after working with him tirelessly in training and extra practices, he was now shooting 9 out of 10. I can do it, he insisted. I did believe he was capable of making a 3, but I also knew that he had been worked up emotionally by the other team for almost the entire game, affecting his performance. Don't let him, another voice interrupted. It was Joseph Laurent, our team's shooting guard. He stood to the left of me in the huddle. Excuse me? Christopher said in disbelief, turning to face him. You shouldn't be the one to make the game-winning shot, he said flatly, ignoring Christopher. You should, Liam. You know better than us. After all, you are our captain. He smiled subtly after uttering that sentence. It was a rare sight to see, and honestly, I was moved by it. Still, I was torn on what to do. Let me be the one to do it, Christopher insisted again, this time more strongly. I glanced back at him. I want to prove to that guy that I can do it. Please, he begged frantically. To my dismay, he was on the verge of breaking down. I couldn't bear to see him like this. Very quickly, his desperation influenced my final decision. It's okay, I yielded. If you think you can do it, then I will help you make that shot. Christopher placed his right hand on my shoulder. Thank you, he sincerely expressed. I won't let you down. Short interval beeps echoed the gym. Timeout had ended, and we stepped towards our positions on the court. As I was heading towards mine though, Joseph strolled past me, which was odd because he didn't need to. It's a bad idea, he muttered before walking off. For a moment, my heart sank. The referee passed the ball to my center who was inbounding from the sidelines near half court. The score is 96-98, one commentator said. There's 23 seconds left on the clock. Sibunga Basketball Club is in the lead, but Dambantayan Basketball Club has possession, so it's anyone's game. The referee blew the whistle and play had resumed. From the corner 3 furthest from my center, I ran to the inside of the center circle to get myself open. My center overhead passed it to me and I flawlessly caught it, controlling the game. Guarding me on top of the key was the other team's point guard again. He really was determined. You know, he said, striking up a conversation mid-play, you're one of the hardest players to guard. You think so? I replied, still focused on the play I was about to run. You're not only great, but you also make your teammates greater, he explained. You're really giving us a run for our money. Thanks! I gladly took the compliment, but I sensed there was a caveat. However, he continued, I know something that you don't. Called it. What is that? I asked. I was intrigued, so I listened closely. You have a flaw. Those 4 words he said to me seemed so insignificant at first, but little did I know it would affect my entire future. Yeah, whatever, I scoffed, brushing him off. This guy was obviously bluffing. Who was he to tell me that I had a flaw? If that was an attempt to throw me off my game, then that was a poor one. Soon, everyone was at their positions, so I finally ran the play. I'm sending this game to overtime, I revealed to his face. I swiftly sidestepped my defender and dribbled to the paint for a layup, but when I looked over my shoulder, expecting him to be close to me, I was instead confused that was not the case. Wait, why was he not chasing me down? Whatever. He was probably too slow anyway. I focused back ahead. 2 other defenders, one to my left and one to my right, ran over to stop me, but they weren't on me quite yet. I quickly jumped 5 feet from the rim and lifted the ball above my head to imitate a shot. Both defenders closed in and jumped as they raised their arms up, trying to block it, but I noticed there was a space clear enough to make it from the backboard. Still, it was not my target. Psych! I yelled. We're ending it here and now! I brought the ball back down in front of my waist and gripped it with just my right hand. Whilst in the air, I saw my right arm to perform a behind the back pass to Christopher, who was left wide open in the corner 3 to my left. I let it go, and it was perfect. Almost. Not on my watch, the defender to my left shouted. It was their small forward. Instantly, he moved his right arm that was up in the air to the side of me to block my pass. With his insane reach, he tipped the ball, making it travel slower and changing its direction slightly. It was now projected to travel to the right of where Christopher was standing. Crap! I messed up. I got it, Christopher shouted. He repositioned himself on the 3-point line accordingly and received the ball. But the other team's point guard, the same one who had taunted him earlier, was already there to lock him up. That was when I realized it. No wonder why he didn't chase me down. That was his plan all along. Go on, shoot, he taunted Christopher with false encouragement. You're gonna miss. Shut up, he yelled back. He lifted the ball up to shoot. I will not miss, he continued as he jumped. This shot! The other team's point guard contested his shot by jumping with his right arm up. At the same time, Christopher released the ball, and from this point on, everything was in slow motion. For a moment, when both players were at peak height, I saw the point guard smirk. My stomach dropped. Oh no, he grazed it. The siren beat for full time and the ball was still in the air. The shot is up, the commentator pointed out. The ball descended to the rim. It hit it once, then twice, then 3 times. On the third, it balanced for a full second. The gym was silent and everyone watched in suspense. The ball rolled outside of the ring, falling to the floor. It bounced several times before it came to rest. For a while, everyone was processing what had happened. Suddenly, someone broke the silence. Yeah! The other team's small forward yelled. Shortly after, the rest of the team cheered with him. Finally, the crowd followed with a roar. And it is no good, the commentator finished his sentence. The Sibunga Basketball Club has won the 2014 Cebu Basketball Championship for the Under-12 division. The other team ran to the middle of the court. They huddled in celebration. But I spotted Christopher at the same place he took the shot from. He fell to his knees, disappointed in himself. I walked over and squatted to his level before patting his back to comfort him. It's fine, I consoled him. We'll win next time. Not long after, Joseph approached us. I told you so, he muttered dully. But of course, as the captain, I must also take accountability after a bad performance. And this was one of them. A couple of hours later, I was walking home from the game. I lived in the countryside of Cebu, an island in the Philippines. The roads were mostly dirt with the occasional stretch of asphalt wide enough for 2 vehicles to pass, one in each direction. Tall grass lined the sides, along with a forest of trees with large elliptical leaves, their greenery brightened by the daylight. Concrete houses dotted the area, some clustered together, others spread far apart. In between were open fields where crops grew or cows and goats wandered freely. I crossed a short bridge passing over a shallow ditch on the ground and carried my worn-out backpack while holding a basketball in between my right hand and waist. Should it have been me to take the final shot? I asked myself. Maybe I shouldn't have been selfless in that situation. I remember Joseph telling me during timeout that I should take it, but Christopher was insisting strongly that he should have. I remembered noticing a clear space on the backboard for me to score, but I opted to pass to Christopher instead, which was then tipped by our opponent. I remembered Christopher shooting the ball, but our other team's point guard was able to touch it, causing him to miss. You have a flaw, the point guard in the other team said to me. I kept replaying those moments over and over again. Ah, it's aching me, I groaned, placing my left hand on my forehead. At last, my house came into view. As I approached closer, I noticed 2 people wearing all blue, and they were standing in front of our door. Who were they? I examined them closely. They were wearing scrubs, and one of them had a stethoscope around their neck. It was health workers. They were talking to my parents and my grandma at the door. I hurried over to find out what was going on, but once I was at the doorstep, my grandma burst into tears. What happened? I asked. 6 days had passed. It was Friday, the day of my grandpa's funeral. My grandma and I stood at the front of the reception, beside his coffin. The story went that my grandpa was doing his job hand plowing crops on the field. Suddenly, a tractor lost control and ran him over. The ambulance arrived quickly, and they rushed over to 3 different hospitals to save his life. Unfortunately, none of them had the adequate technology to take care of him, and shortly after arriving at the 3rd hospital, he bled out and succumbed to his injuries. Why? Why did you have to die? My grandma cried out hysterically, placing her hands on the coffin and lowering her head beside the framed picture of him. You promised me that we would move to the city together. Later that night, I was at home in the living room with my grandma. She sat rocking gently in her rocking chair, staring at the framed picture of him in her left hand. I sat on the couch perpendicular to her, quietly sharing in her grief. Apo, she called me. Yes, Lola? Have I ever told you that you look just like your Lolo? Many times, Lola. I couldn't bear to see her like this. If only there was something I could do to cheer her up. Oh, I knew. I could show her some cool basketball moves. Hey Lola, look what I can do. I picked up a couple of basketballs on the floor and performed some tricks in front of her. I crisscrossed between the legs, I dribbled both at the same time, and I even spun them on my index fingers. Eventually, I was balancing one on top of the other on the tip of my nose. Are you seeing this, Lola? I asked with excitement. Unfortunately, that final trick didn't last long. Uh-oh, the balls had lost balance. I tried to keep them balancing, but I leaned too far backwards and fell to the floor, landing hard on my back. Ouch! One ball dropped to the floor and rolled away, but the other bounced on the coffee table and hit the remote, switching the TV on. Breaking news! A woman's voice broadcasted. I turned my head to the TV across the room. The news channel was on, and there was a journalist holding a microphone on the screen. As I picked myself up from the floor, I continued to watch the program. What could the important news be? I'm proud to announce that the Year 9 class consisting of an Indian, Chinese, Afghan, Guinean and Filipino, you heard that right, Filipino, representative have won the 5th edition of the Flora Games, she reported. The Flora Games? I've heard about it before, but I wasn't exactly sure what it was. If you don't know what that is, the Flora Games is an annual year-long event where genius students from all around the world come together in Canberra, Australia to compete in a series of games demonstrating their athletic and academic abilities, she explained. The winners of the games win a trophy and a hefty cash prize, $1 million Australian for each starting 5 player. That's about 40 million pesos. Wow, 40 million pesos? I was stunned. That could set me and my family up for life, not just in the countryside, but in Manila too. This year, Flora High was our Year 9 representative, and she was in Eucalyptus, the accelerated house for the year level, she detailed. It's the first time in history a Filipino in the starting 5 has won the Flora Games. Congratulations, Flora, you deserve it. Maybe next time we'll have a Filipino win the MVP award too. Wow, that truly is remarkable. Thanks for that, the newsman responded, the screen cutting to him in the studio. After a segment ended, it gave me an idea. I turned around to face my grandma. Hey Lula. Yes, Apo, she replied, wiping the tears from her eyes. I've decided that I'm going to represent our country in the Flora Games. I kneeled down in front of her. Then, when I win, I will fulfill Lola's promise to you, I continued, grabbing her hand, and take you to the city. Hundreds of students marched through the school's front gate towards the parliament-like building. Hedges with colourful flowers formed the boundary of the bricked walkway, making a lush scenery. Large trees planted behind the hedges towered over them, providing shade, with little sunlight seeping through the leaves to form a pattern on the ground. A flagpole was planted in the middle of the walkway, and it extended 6 meters into the air, waving the Flora flag. A white field with a black circle outline meant to be the pistil of a flower, and 7 different coloured arch-shaped outlines connecting to the circle, meant to be the petals. It was the first morning of Flora High School, and I stood before the gate admiring it. I can't believe it. I'm finally attending the most recognizable school in the world, I said to myself in disbelief. I promised you, Lula, that I would win the Flora Games and take you to the city. I took a few steps on the walkway towards the main building, following everyone else. As I was halfway there though, I heard quick footsteps coming from behind me. I'm going to be late, a voice shouted. Ah! I yelped. Next thing I knew, someone bumped into me, and I flew forwards before belly flopping on the ground. Ow, I reacted dazingly, rubbing my hand on my head. My vision went blurry for a second, and I was worried. Oh no, I couldn't see. I hoped I didn't have a concussion already. Sorry, are you okay? The same voice asked. Eventually, my vision went back to normal. Phew, I was okay. I tilted my head up to find out who was asking, but instead I saw a hand offering to pull me up off the ground. I looked across, following the arm to see who it belonged to. To my surprise, it was a girl. Let me help you up, she kindly insisted. Wow, she was beautiful. She had bright purple eyes which complemented her fair skin. Her dark wavy hair laid down to her armpit length, and she had a slight fringe covering her forehead. But most importantly, she had a mesmerizing smile which can melt anyone's heart. In fact, beautiful was an understatement. She was just, ugh. She wore the girl's preferred summer high school uniform, a light blue sundress designed with a darker blue checkered pattern. This was fitted underneath the royal blue blazer and navy blue necktie, which was compulsory for every student. She had on plain white socks almost to her knees and black closed-toed shoes. By the way, boys like me had to wear light blue short sleeve shirts underneath our blazers and neckties, as well as our grey pants and grey socks. I hesitated. Thank you. I grabbed her soft, warm hand and she quickly pulled me up. Once up, I brushed myself off, getting rid of any debris and readjusted my uniform. Meanwhile, she bowed in front of me, holding her briefcase-like school bag in front of her waist with both hands on the handle. This caught me off guard. I'm really sorry, she said apologetically again, this time even more profusely. I was rushing because I didn't want to be late on my first day. I swear I didn't see you there. It's okay, I assured. I don't think a warning bell even rang yet. Oh, thank goodness. She let out a huge sigh of relief and stood straight again. So you're new here too? I asked, hoping to continue our conversation. Yeah, she cheerfully answered. Let me introduce myself. My full name is Alina Lee, and I'm transferring from Canberra South High School. Oh, that's cool. I'm Lyam Rigodon, transferring from Canberra West High School. Which house are you in? Flora High School had 7 different houses, each named after an Australian flower. It was kind of like classes. Students were assigned to a house from year 9, and they remained in that house every year until they graduated after finishing year 12. So you were pretty much stuck with the same classmates for the rest of your high school life. Well, according to this, she said, popping out the left collar of her blazer to show off her maroon coloured badge, I'm in Darwinia. All students also had to wear a coloured badge with a flower logo, signifying which house they were in. She examined my badge carefully. Your badge is blue, she pointed out, so you must be in Eucalyptus then, right? Yep, I proudly answered. The best house, of course. "Oh, so you're in the Accelerated House?" she curiously asked. The Accelerated House was said to be where the top 14% of students in the year level were assigned to. I didn't think it was fair, but that was what the school did. It was probably to discourage countries from sending student representatives who were strictly smart or strictly athletic, since getting into the Accelerated House effectively guaranteed you winning the Flora Games. This year though, it wasn't Eucalyptus. Well, not exactly, I began to clarify. Suddenly I was interrupted by the warning bell, indicating it was 10 minutes until the start of period 1. After it finished ringing, an announcement played to the whole school. I glanced over at one of the speakers on the main building. "Good morning everyone," a deep voice greeted. Phew, I didn't have to embarrassingly explain myself to her. I was literally saved by the bell. "This is your assistant principal, Mr. Davies speaking," he continued. "Welcome to the first day of the school year. If you're in year 9, please head to the Melaleuca Theatre for an assembly. Otherwise, make your way to your house to begin period 1. Thank you." The announcement ended and I glanced back at Alina. "Well, let's hurry along then, shall we?" she prompted me with a sincere smile. "Yeah, let's." A long line of students marched into the Melaleuca building and queued up by the door furthest down the hallway. Alina and I stood in line, and we were slowly but surely approaching closer. Eventually we caught sight of a tall white man in his 40s, wearing a grey suit, standing by the door. "Students, once you enter the theatre, please find your designated seating area, which is allocated by house," he loudly instructed. He sounded similar to the man in the announcement that was played through the speakers earlier. He must have been the assistant principal, Mr. Davy. "I wonder what the theatre looks like," Alina said, waiting in the queue next to me. I wondered that too. If the front of the school was a testament to how the rest of the school looked, then I was sure the theatre would look beautiful too. Finally we reached the door, and as we walked through, we checked out the theatre. Immediately we were amazed. The dark-coloured room was spacious. There were rows of seats alternating between 7 colours: orange, red, maroon, blue, green, purple and yellow, and it elevated every row, so the audience was looking down at the stage. Every 2 or 3 rows were designated to each house, using signs to indicate them. The lowest rows were for Banksia, followed by Callistemon, Darwinia, Eucalyptus, Fern, Grevillea, and last but not least, Hakea taking the highest rows. There was no way it couldn't accommodate more than 300 students. "Wow, it's already half packed," I exclaimed in astonishment. "I know, right?" We climbed up the staircase on the right side of the room and reached Darwinia's designated seating area first. Guarding the entrance to the rows of seats was a fit, 6-foot-tall man with fair skin, curly brown hair, and a stubble beard. He wore a peach-colored long-sleeve polo shirt, highlighting his muscular body tucked into his black slim-fit jeans. I didn't really swing that way, but he was attractive. He stared us down with his dark red colored eyes and menacing smile as he crossed his arms. "Is this Darwinia?" Alina asked him. "That's right," he firmly answered. She turned her head back to me. "Well, I guess this is my stop," she told me. "I hope I'll get to see you again soon." "Yeah, I hope so too," I replied with a cheerful smile. We waved goodbye to each other before splitting up. As she walked along one of the rows to find a seat, I continued to climb up the stairs, but while doing so, it felt like the tall man's eyes were pinned to me as I went past him. It was intimidating. Eventually that feeling was gone, and I reached the Eucalyptus seating area. Guarding it this time was a woman with pale skin, long brown hair done in a ponytail, and light blue eyes. She wore a black suit, skirt and heels, and she was slightly shorter than me. Mind you, my official height was listed at 5'7" by the school. "You in Eucalyptus?" she asked with a stern look on her face. "Yeah?" "Go on then," she said, briefly gesturing with her right hand for me to take a seat before crossing her arms again. I walked along one of the rows of empty seats to take the furthest one available, and I ended up sitting next to a blonde white boy with a clean side part haircut. He sat upright, his legs were close together, and he clamped his hands together on his lap. He held his head up high and projected as if he was better than everyone else in the room. "Hey, what's up, bro?" I casually greeted him, trying to seem friendly. "Bro?" he questioned distastefully. "Is that how you address someone you've never met?" "Oh, sorry," I replied quickly. Unfortunately, he was not impressed by the way I talked to him. From this interaction alone, I could tell he was a stuck-up person. "Whatever," he continued. "I have no intention of making friends with the lower people here. My objective is simply to win." "Yep, very stuck-up." "Oh yeah, for sure, for sure." Was I in the wrong? No, it was definitely him. After our conversation ended, which left me sour, I looked around the theatre from where I was sitting. There were lots of students from all around the world crowded into one room. Everyone was different. Different skin tones, different heights, different personalities. To be honest, the realization of the amount of competition I had made me feel threatened. I wasn't sure if I was able to do this. "No, keep it together. Remember that I was doing this for Lula." Soon I noticed there were some well-dressed people on the stage. No more than a dozen gentlemen and gentlewomen were seated on chairs, wearing formal attire. I recognized one of the men as the current Prime Minister of Australia, John Collins. I suspected the rest must also be members from the Australian Parliament. Seconds later, the bell rang and the last few students scrambled into their seats. At the same time, a somewhat old white lady appeared from the curtain on the left side of the stage and strutted to the podium in the middle. Once there, she adjusted the built-in microphone before speaking into it. Everyone quieted down. Good morning, Prime Minister of Australia John Collins, members of the Australian Parliament, distinguished guests, fellow staff and Year 9 students, she greeted foolishly in one breath. My name is Mrs. Watson, and I am the principal of Flora High School. Welcome to the 10th edition of the Flora Games! Students clapped and cheered in response, then gradually settled down. In case you don't know how the Flora Games work, I will explain it to you in just a moment, the principal continued. But first, I would like to congratulate you all. Not only are you able to attend this very prestigious school, which is an accomplishment of its own, but you're also able to proudly represent your own countries. It's an honor to be selected as your country's representative, so just know that even if you don't end up winning, playing for your country is still a massive achievement. So please, give yourself a round of applause. Students clapped and cheered again. It absolutely was an honor to play for my country, and it was evident others agreed with the sentiment. Eventually, it died down again so the principal could speak. Now, without further ado, let me explain to you how the Flora Games will work. You already know that the school has 7 houses. You're all assigned to one. Houses play against each other in a best of 7 games using an elimination tournament structure. So if your house wins 4 out of 7 games, then you progress to the next round. But if your house loses, then you're out for the rest of the year. A helpful diagram showing a bracket format was displayed on the screen behind her, which made it easier to understand. It reminded me of the NBA playoffs, where teams would play against each other in a best of 7 basketball games, and the winner would progress to the next round while the loser would be knocked out of the tournament. These games, which will be spread out across the school year, require either 5 representatives from each house, also known as the starting 5, or the house as a whole, and they could be athletic-based, academic-based, or a mix of both. In round 1, Banksia will play against Callistemon, Darwinia will play against Eucalyptus, and Fern will play against Hakea. Since Grevillea is the accelerated house, they will get a bye in the first round. Murmurs about how unfair the structure was rose amongst the students. Why do they get a bye? How come they get special treatment? This is unfair. These were some of the comments I overheard from the crowd. Ahem, the principal cleared her throat. This silenced them and she carried on. In round 2, the winner of Banksia vs Callistemon will play against the winner of Darwinia vs Eucalyptus, and the winner of Fern vs Hakea will play against Grevillea. Then the winner of those 2 matches will play against each other in the grand finale. Let me remind you that the winning house will receive not just a trophy, but also $1 million for each starting 5 player, and the rest of the students will split $1 million equally between them. Talk amongst the students rose again, this time focused on what they wanted to do with the prize money if they won. I'm gonna buy a mansion, one student whispered. I'm gonna buy a yacht, another muttered. I'm gonna move to a tropical island and retire forever, a third said eagerly. As for me, what I wanted to do with the money was the same as it was a few years ago, which was to take my grandma to the city. But obviously I needed to make sure that I could actually win first before I could even think about that. Now, are there any questions? The principal asked us. There was no response. Very well then, let the games begin! Once the assembly ended, the same woman who guarded the Eucalyptus seating area in the Melaleuca Theatre escorted those of us sitting there to Eucalyptus' house, and she brought us inside a classroom. Students, please find your desks which has a sign of your country's name on it, she instructed. This is where you'll be seated at for the rest of the year. The classroom's layout was simple. Single student desks were organized in 4 rows of 6, and they all faced the front of the classroom, which had a teacher's desk, twice the size of the student's one, and a whiteboard. There was a long horizontal window on the wall opposite to the door entrance of the classroom. Since it was on the 2nd floor, it looked over the beautiful green area, a park-like region in the middle of the school's front campus. Wow, so cool! I stepped towards the front row of desks and checked the ones that weren't occupied yet, but there was no sign of my country's name. I moved over to the 2nd and 3rd row to do the same thing, but still there was nothing. Finally, I checked the last row. Ah, there it was. A sign had the name Philippines in bold writing, and it was on the desk second closest to the window. I took off my backpack, putting it on the floor underneath, and sat on my seat. As I waited patiently for other students to find theirs, I felt a sense of being watched. I turned my head slowly to the left, and for a split second, I saw a girl staring at me. She quickly jolted her head down towards her desk to act like she wasn't. Hello? I wasn't staring at you or anything, she nervously exclaimed. That was obviously very questionable. Anyway, she looked really familiar. Do I know you? I curiously asked. She looked stunned. You don't remember me? We went to the same school together. I examined her up and down, trying to jog my memory. How did I know her? From the way she sat on her seat and trembled, I could tell she was getting nervous by my intense staring. The way she sat on her seat. Ah, I remembered. Oh, Aya, it's you. It was Aya Hamud, a girl from Iraq. Before students could attend Flora High School, they had to attend a high school nearby in year 7 and 8 to prepare them for the Flora Games. We both attended Canberra West High School, and I usually spotted her sitting alone on a bench during breaks. She was quiet and often kept to herself, and whenever I struck up a conversation with her, she did try to keep it going. But it mostly ended with her shouting "never mind" and averting her gaze, completely shutting me off. It took you long enough, she complained shyly. Sorry, I told her. You look a bit different without your glasses. Her hairstyle was still the same. She had long dark brown hair down to her mid-back with pigtails at the front. one on each side of her face. Since she didn't wear glasses, her fair skin and bright red eyes popped out more. It was going to take some time getting used to it. What a coincidence though that we're in the same house, I pointed out. Yeah, she replied. I'm glad. She softly said that last part. She might have been grinning too, but I couldn't exactly say for sure. Hey Liam, she continued. Yeah, what's up? I asked, showing her a friendly smile. It seemed she wanted to tell me something, but she paused and stared at me for a moment. It was like she was having a flashback mid-conversation. Eventually, she was brought back to real life. Never mind, she shouted, quickly jolting her head down towards her desk again. Case in point. Good morning, students, the woman who led us here greeted seriously from the front of the class. Everyone was in their seats, giving her their full attention. I hope you all are doing well. My name is Miss Katsoulis, and I'll be your house teacher. Although I primarily teach humanities, due to the way things are done at this school, I'll be teaching you for every subject. Usually on first days, teachers would get you all to introduce yourselves, but you can do that on your own time. Instead, I want you all to take a test. She picked up a stack of papers from her desk and walked over to the front row, handing out each paper individually to each student. The test will be used to determine the starting 5, she explained. And of course, you want to be in the starting 5 if you want to win more money, so do your best. Whilst she handed them out, I turned to ask Aya a question. Psst, Aya, I whispered. Are you hoping to be in the starting 5? She shook her head. Not really. I prefer to be in the background whenever I can. Honestly, I thought it was for the best. She wasn't mentally strong enough yet to represent our house, but maybe in the future she will be. Do you want to be in the starting 5? She asked. Yeah, absolutely, I answered with excitement. I think it'd be really cool. She paused and stared at me again. Then she smiled. Good luck, she expressed, crossing her fingers with her right hand showing me. I appreciated the gesture. Thanks. Next thing I knew, Miss Katsoulis arrived at my desk, but she took more time standing near mine than others. She was checking something on top of a stack of test papers. Lyam Rigodon? She asked for confirmation. Yeah, that's right. Okay. She grabbed the test paper from the bottom of the pile and handed it to me before moving on to the next student. I was confused. What was that all about? You have 5 minutes to complete the test, Miss Katsoulis informed the class, and your time starts now. Everyone rushed to get started as the teacher laid back on her chair with her legs crossed on top of her desk and her hands behind her head. She was resting like she was on vacation. For some reason it looked familiar. Anyway, I skimmed through the test and found the questions to be a bit strange. They weren't your normal problem solving questions like you saw in an English or math test. Rather, it was more like a personality quiz. What would you do if your classmate was blackmailed into getting expelled with a false accusation and you couldn't prove it? Well, I'd help them, of course. Every other question was also about a classmate being in trouble, so I couldn't just write down I'd help them over and over again. I had to be more specific. Maybe I'd dig into the person that was behind the blackmailing and see if they had been playing by the rulebook. If not, then I would use that against them. This continued on for a few pages, with the next question becoming more oddly specific than the last. It wasn't difficult per se, it just required plenty of abstract thinking. I breezed through the questions and eventually I reached the last page. Finally, I was almost done. I should take a break before answering the final questions though. I stretched my arms out before quickly bringing them back in and turned my head to the left to see how Aya was doing. Unsurprisingly, she was laser focused on her test as her hand wrote on the paper. She worked diligently and I couldn't help but smile. She was going to be okay. I turned my head to the right. To my shock, I witnessed the boy not even attempting to do his test. From the sign on his desk, he was from Guinea. He was engrossed in his pen, clicking the button on the top a countless number of times. He paid no attention to his test paper at all. Seriously, what was he doing? Just a reminder, you have 1 minute to go, Miss Katsoulis warned. Please make sure you've been answering the questions to the best of your ability. Immediately, the boy panicked. He swiftly brought the pen to his test paper and scribbled as he scanned the questions. He was allowing no time to think about it. Was he being for real right now? Time's up, everyone. Drop your pens, Miss Katsoulis announced. I will be coming around to collect the tests. What did you think of the tests? I asked Aya as the teacher collected the tests from the students in the first row. It was pretty difficult, she answered, but I think I did okay. Her response caught me off guard. Really? I didn't think it was hard at all. Maybe she had trouble thinking of appropriate responses to some of the odd situations, which was fair. I turned my head to the right to see how the boy next to me was going. As expected, he was still frantically writing. He was only halfway done, but soon the teacher arrived at his desk to collect the test from him. Stop writing, Miss Katsoulis demanded. Wait, I need more time, he replied, still focusing on his test. Her expression tightened in frustration. I said, stop writing now! She snatched the test from his desk, startling him, and strode away as he pouted, wanting to get the test paper back. Poor guy. Once the teacher collected everyone's tests, she returned to the front of the class. Now that that's out of the way, I'll assign you all your lockers to put your bags away, she told us. Then we're going to take a tour around the school. Once we stored our bags away in our assigned lockers just outside the classroom, the teacher escorted us to the middle of the school's front campus. This here is the green area, Miss Katsoulis pointed out. The green area was vast. Gravel pathways branched out in every direction, with wooden benches placed here and there. Native trees and colourful flowers were scattered across the freshly cut grass, filling the space. It felt like walking through a botanical garden. It was refreshing. From here, you can make your way towards many of the school's facilities, she continued. Surrounding the green area were 7 identical rectangular prison-shaped houses. Banksia, Callistemon, Darwinia, Eucalyptus, Fern, Grevillea and Hakea. They could only be told apart by the colour of one of their walls. Orange, red, maroon, blue, green, purple and yellow respectively. The rest of the exterior was black or varying shades of grey. Next to the green area stood a building designed like a regular fast food restaurant. The teacher followed one of the pathways and led us in that direction. This here is the canteen, she said once we were all inside. If you're hungry, then you can visit the canteen during breaks to order food. Inside also looked like a regular fast food restaurant. There was a front counter with workers employed by the school behind it to place orders and serve food. Dining tables were available, and some were positioned next to the window, looking over the green area. Students participating in the Flora Games received a monthly allowance of $1,500 to spend on food and other amenities as long as it was domestic. Although I probably wouldn't be spending much here since they only sold the most basic types of burgers, fries and drinks. "One large barbecue cheeseburger meal please," a voice cheerfully ordered. I turned my head to the front of the counter and the Guinean boy, the same one who sat next to me in class, was ordering something. How is he already hungry? "Is that a Coke for the drink?" the cashier replied. The teacher noticed the situation and became visibly irritated. "It's not break time yet." She grabbed the back of his collar and forcibly dragged him away as he pouted, wanting to return to the counter. Was he always like this? The tour of the front campus continued. We visited the library where we could borrow books, study privately and play tabletop games. We visited the front office where we could ask for help with personal or school related problems. We even visited more buildings designated for niche subjects like art, science and technology. After finishing the tour of the front campus, the teacher led us to the back campus across the street. We visited the Melaleuca building again, where we had our assembly in the Melaleuca Theatre. Besides the theatre, there were music rooms and dance studios for music and dance subjects. But most importantly, there was an indoor gym that fitted 2 full-size basketball courts or 6 full-size volleyball courts. We weren't allowed to go inside as it was already in use, so we gazed through the windows to check it out. "That is the Melaleuca gym," Miss Katsoulis told us. "You'll notice that right now there are students taking a test. They're Year 12 students, and they're actually playing their first game of the Flora Games." I pressed up against the window to take a closer look. 10 students sat at their desks in 2 single lines of 5, with Banksia students in one column and Callistemon students in the other. They focused intently on their tests, and I could tell they felt the immense pressure of having the whole house rest entirely on their shoulders. For some reason though, it excited me. "Wow," I expressed in awe. "They're so cool. I hope I can represent our house like that too." After watching them for a while, I heard a familiar voice call out from behind. "Liam, is that you?" I looked over my shoulder. To my surprise, stepping towards me was Alina, the girl that bumped into me this morning. Her smile was enchanting. "Hey Alina," I greeted. "Funny seeing you again." She stood next to me and we watched the students in the gym together. "What's happening over there?" she curiously asked. "Well, apparently Year 12 students are taking a test as their first game." "Oh, that's interesting. What's the test about?" I'm not sure," I answered before turning to Miss Katsoulis who was lurking behind us. "Hey miss, what kind of tests are they doing?" "It's a general achievement test," she explained. "It consists of 100 multiple choice questions aimed to test your general knowledge. It will also be your year level's first game in the Flora Games." Alina chuckled. "Imagine if it was us against each other. Wouldn't that be cool?" "Yeah, it absolutely would," I answered in excitement. It was entirely possible since Darwinia and Eucalyptus were playing against each other in the first round. I wondered though if it was wise to be friends with an opponent. I hoped it wasn't a problem because I really did like her. As a friend, of course. "Okay, Eucalyptus students, let's continue on with the tour," Miss Katsoulis directed. "There are a few more places we need to check out before period 1 ends, so let's get a move on." "Sorry," I said sadly to Alina. "I have to go now." "Oh, it's okay." I was devastated I couldn't hang out with Alina much longer. As I trudged towards the exit of the Melaleuca building with my head down, she stopped me. "Wait, let's meet up at the canteen during recess," she suggested. I turned around to see her. Obviously I couldn't refuse seeing her smile again, so I agreed. "Yeah, sure, see you there," I replied cheerfully. We waved goodbye to each other as we split up. Ooh, I couldn't wait to see her again. On my way out though, I saw the fit 6-foot tall man again, the same one who guarded the Darwinia seating area in the theatre, standing by the exit. As I walked past him, his eyes were pinned to me like before. What was his problem? Once we finished the rest of the tour, we returned to Eucalyptus. Everyone sat quietly at their desks, waiting for the teacher to announce the starting 5. The results of the test have been calculated, Miss Katsoulis revealed, and I will now be announcing the starting 5. Please stand up if your name is called. I was nervous. What if my name wasn't called? I turned to Aya, and she quickly showed me a thumbs up and a reassuring smile, as if to say I had this in the bag. That helped calm me down. The 5 students representing Year 9 Eucalyptus for the 2019 Flora Games are... She lowered her head to read from the tablet she was holding, while I gripped the sides of my desk tightly, anxiously waiting for the names. Ariv Alawalia from India. A boy in the front row stood up. He had dark hair and a comb-over, mid-brown skin, and was a few inches taller than me. Daniel Hujamakuli from China. A boy in the second row stood up. He had blonde hair in the middle part, pale white skin, and was also a few inches taller than me. Ali Sina Afzali from Afghanistan. A boy in the front row next to Ariv stood up. He had dark hair and a short faux hawk, fair skin, and was around 6 foot tall. Falasar from Guinea. Wait, what? I was shocked. The boy next to me, who had been distracted for the majority of the test, made it into the starting 5. Maybe the questions he did do, he was able to answer them very well. But as I watched him right now, he remained seated, fidgeting with his pen. He wasn't paying attention, and the teacher noticed. Fala, stand up, Miss Katsoulis yelled, throwing a whiteboard marker that hit him on the head. Ah, he yelped, quickly jumping up from his seat. Sorry. Or maybe it was just a fluke. Nevertheless, the boy had short dark coily hair, dark brown skin, and was another student a few inches taller than me. Now that I had thought about it, I was probably the shortest boy in class. And finally, Miss Katsoulis continued, the 5th student in the starting 5 is... She looked back down on the tablet, and I was starting to lose hope. At this point, there was only a 1 in 20 chance of my name being called. I didn't like those odds, but I still waited anxiously. Finally, the teacher looked up to announce the last name. Please pick me, please pick me, please pick me. There was a dramatic pause. Then, she said a name. Lyam Rigodon from the Philippines. I was speechless. My name had been called and I stood up straight away. My test result must have narrowly made the cut. I felt relieved, but someone else clearly didn't. What? A voice shouted in disbelief. The boy at the desk in front of Falas stood up from his seat and slammed his hands on the desk in anger. I looked closely, and it was the same boy I tried to have a conversation with before the assembly. From the sign on his desk, he was from Denmark. I should be in the starting 5, he demanded. Calm down, Miss Katsoulis replied. I've decided based on test results, so if you didn't make it, then you probably didn't do well enough. He was visibly still not content with what she said. Then how is he representing us, he complained, pointing at Fala behind him. He's an imbecile. If he represents us, then we're going to lose. Hey, I'm not a symbol, Fala snapped back. That wasn't even the right word. The Danish boy turned around to face him. You cheated on your test, didn't you? He accused. That's the only way you were able to make it into the starting 5. Nuh-uh, I didn't cheat. The situation was getting intense, and someone had to put a stop to it before it got any worse. Alright, that's enough, Miss Katsoulis interrupted. If you have a problem with it, then by all means you're allowed to protest his position in the starting 5, and everyone else in this room will act as jurors to your case. This goes for every one of you. However, as of now, there is nothing to base his performance off of, so it's up to me to decide who I believe should be in the starting 5. If you don't like that, then you're welcome to leave. Not just this classroom, but the school as well. She was firm with her explanation. The Danish boy was annoyed, but he shut his mouth and sat back down. It was awkward, but eventually the teacher broke the silence. Anyway, those that I've called out, please line up at the front of the class. All 5 of us marched to the front, and we stood side by side, facing our classmates. Take a look at the 5 students that will represent us in the Flora Games, Miss Katsoulis told the rest of the class before turning to us. Make us proud, boys. She lowered her head once more to play with her tablet. This is going to be very interesting, I heard her mutter to herself. 10 minutes before period 1 ended, the starting 5 sat at a round table outside the classroom, joined by the teacher to discuss more about the Flora Games. I used the opportunity to observe my classmates. To my right was Fala. I was still surprised he made it into the starting 5, especially since he had only worked on the test for about a minute. Maybe he was insanely smart when he put his mind into things, but as usual, he was fidgeting with his pen, like he was trying to figure out how it worked. I started to doubt him. Why had the teacher included him? Directly across from me was Daniel. We had transferred from the same school, so I already knew of him, but I only ever saw him around as we had no reason to encounter each other. His face was expressionless, like he was always bored or tired, and I still wasn't sure how smart he actually was. Hopefully he wouldn't be a problem. Next to him were Ariv on his right and Ali Sina on his left. They were the only students in the starting 5 I knew nothing about, but I was sure I would learn about them soon enough. All of you have been chosen because you scored well on the test, Miss Katsoulis on my left explained, so don't make me regret it. Really? I was skeptical, because how would you grade a personality quiz? Now, she continued, you already know how the Flora Games work, as it was explained by the principal during the assembly, how it's a best of 7 games and that we're up against Darwinia in the first round. Some of us nodded, but Fala was still distracted by his pen. The teacher, however, chose to ignore it. My purpose is to explain to you what each game is, as well as help with the strategizing and smooth running of the games to ensure our house wins. I want you all to know that you shouldn't be going easy in these games, because everyone will be performing at a high level, both athletically and academically. Last year's Year 9s did not make it past the first round. Hopefully it won't again this year. From what I could remember, Eucalyptus lost to Darwinia in Game 7 of the first round, but it was really close. Game 7s were highly televised around the world because they were the most thrilling event and people wanted to see their country win. As a result, lots of ads and sponsors rolled during it, which was how the Flora games generated a lot of money. Now, let's talk about the first game. As you've witnessed during the tour, the first game will be the General Achievement Test. It consists of 100 multiple choice questions aimed to test your general knowledge, so you don't have to study for it. However, you may need to work on your critical thinking. Each student will receive a percentage of how much they answered right in the test. Then, an average percentage will be calculated using all 5 of your percentages, and the house with the highest average percentage will win. It was simple enough. I had done something similar in Canberra West High School, so it wasn't entirely new to me. It will be held on Monday in week 2. Any questions? That was exactly 1 week from now. The teacher looked around the table and was met by silence and shaking of the heads. Eventually she paid her attention to Fala. He had held the pen upside down and pressed it down on the table so that the button was pushed. His head was above the pen, with one eye open looking down on it. He wasn't listening, so she called him out. Fala! Ah! He yelped, startled by her yelling. He reflexively let go of the pen, but it rocket launched out of his hands and poked him in the eye. Ow, he cried, covering his injured eye with his hand as he sat properly back in his seat. Did you even listen to a word I said? She crossly asked. No, he replied quietly, lowering his head in shame. Sorry. She let out a disappointed sigh. Someone fill him in with what I just said later, she told the rest of us. That was who she chose to be in the starting 5? Ding! A notification sound came from the teacher's tablet, prompting her to check it. Ah, one more thing, she added. I have just received confirmation of the 5 students you will be competing against in Darwinia. Have a look. She turned the tablet screen towards us, revealing 5 headshots, each labelled with the student's full name and the country they represented underneath. From left to right, they were Sadia Yusuf from Pakistan, Midori Miyazaki from Japan, Zarina Akhmedova from Tajikistan, Taiwo Olanrewaju from Nigeria, and Zelina Lee from Vietnam. It was an all-girls lineup, and I was surprised. No way. One of the students I was competing against was the girl that bumped into me this morning. The bell rang and it was recess. With the meeting adjourned, I headed to the canteen to meet up with Alina. We found a table by the window overlooking the green area and sat across from each other. What a coincidence that we're both in the starting 5 playing against each other, she remarked. For real, I replied excitedly after sipping my mango flavoured milkshake. But do you think it's okay, being friends with each other even though we're in competing houses? I'm sure it'll be fine. We're students in different houses, not members of rivaling gangs. She made a good point. We were kids after all. I also assumed competitiveness between students would stay during games. I didn't think anyone would go as far as to sabotage others when not actively in one. Halfway through sipping her strawberry flavoured milkshake, she thought of something. Hey, let's agree that even though we're in competing houses, we won't let it ruin our friendship, she proposed. She extended her hand out in front of me for a handshake. I couldn't agree more. I shook her hand and it was pleasant to the touch. I couldn't help but blush. Afterwards we continued sipping our milkshakes, and eventually I shifted our conversation. So what do you think of the school so far? I asked. Well, I think the scenery here is beautiful, she said warmly. The lush trees, the vibrant flowers, it's very majestic. She described the school very well, and I couldn't put it into better words myself. But if we're talking about the structure of the school, she continued, then I think it's kind of unfair how the top students get to be in one house. It makes it impossible for students like us to win. That is true. Every house that had won the Flora game since its debut in 2010 was the Accelerated House. In 2014, Eucalyptus was the Accelerated House for the Year 9 cohort. Not only did they win that year, but also the next 3 years when they moved up. This year, Grevillea was the Accelerated House, so they were favorited to win. Why couldn't the school mix it up so that there was better competition? Hey, so, Elena said, interrupting my train of thought. Can we exchange phone numbers? Just in case we need something from each other, you know? She twirled her hair and blushed as she asked that question. Was this a subtle way of asking me out? Sure, okay. We each pulled out our phones and recited our phone numbers, both provided by the school, to each other. Once we saved them in our contacts, we made eye contact again and smiled. I received the beautiful girl's phone number. I could stare at her all day, but this moment didn't last long as we would soon be interrupted by 2 students making a scene. Are you serious? A boy's voice exclaimed. We instinctively turned our heads. Near the doorway entrance of the canteen, a boy and a girl stood facing each other, clearly in a heated argument. I recognized the boy. It was Ariv, one of my classmates that was also in the starting 5. The girl, however, not so much. They were causing a scene, so I jumped up from my seat and hurried over to see what was going on. Alina must have had the same idea, as she followed close behind. "What's wrong with you?" Ariv yelled at the girl. "What do you mean, what's wrong with me? That was your fault," she yelled back. Eventually, Alina and I arrived at where they were standing, and I investigated the matter. "Hey, what happened?" I asked Ariv. "This girl spilled a drink on me on purpose," he furiously explained. I inspected his blazer, and it was drenched in brown liquid. A whiff suggested it was coffee. "Sadia, is that true?" Alina asked the girl. "Huh? She knew her? But how? Wait, could it be?" After recalling the lineup on the teacher's tablet, I realized who she was. Her name was Sadia Yusuf, one of Alina's classmates that was also in Darwinia's starting 5. She had long dark hair that reached down to her tailbone, a fringe covering her forehead, mid-brown skin, and glowing red eyes that made her angry expression stand out even more. With her arms crossed, she stood confidently, as if she'd done nothing wrong. "No, he walked into me," Sadia snapped. "You damn liar!" Ariv shouted. "Oh yeah? And what are you going to do about it?" she shot back. Ariv was visibly triggered. He moved his right arm to grab her, but I held it back before he could succeed. Was he seriously going to hurt her? "Let me go," he ordered. "What is it you're even trying to do?" I asked with concern. "She needs to learn a lesson. Pain is the only way that will correct her behavior." "Wait, what?" "Tch," Sadia scoffed. "You can go ahead and try. I'll take you down before you can even touch me." "That's it." Provoked by a comment, Ariv shoved me aside and escaped my grip on his arm. He lunged towards her, reaching out to grab her by the collar. But before he could touch her, a fit tall man stepped in front of him, blocking his way and forcing him to come to a sudden stop. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," he warned. I looked up. It was the same man that was staring at me all morning. He appeared more muscular up close. "Pfft, whatever," Ariv muttered, taking a step back. He backed off. It was the right call. The tall man took a moment to look each of us over. "Lyam Rigodon and Ariv Alawalia," he called. "Yeah? What's it to you?" Ariv snapped. "Oh, nothing," he replied slyly, a smirk on his face. "Good luck with the first game next week." The bell rang and it was the end of recess. Students had 5 minutes to get to class before period 2 started. "Alina and Sadia, go now," he told them. "Class is about to start." "Yes, sir," they replied in unison. The tall man exited the canteen, and Sadia stepped towards the door to follow him. "Hey, I'm not done with you," Ariv shouted after her. Much to his annoyance, she ignored him and walked out anyway. Alina hung back. "Well, I'll see you around," she said, her tone lacking its usual cheer given the situation. "Yeah, see you." As she quickly left the canteen to follow them, I glanced back at Ariv. His blazer was still soaked, and the smell of coffee was even stronger now. "That thinks she can get away with this," he exclaimed. "She's going to pay." I went to pat his back. "Let's go and get you cleaned up first," I told him. What stuck with me the most was what Ariv said earlier. Pain was the only way to correct people's behavior. Did he really believe that? 16 minutes after period 2 started, Ariv and I arrived to class. I opened the door right in the middle of the teacher's lecture. "You two are late," Miss Katsula said firmly. "Sorry, miss," I said apologetically. "We ran into some difficulties." "It's fine," she replied quickly. "I'll let it slide for now. But next time, unless you have a note, I'll have to hold you back." "Thank you, miss." We hurried to our desks as the teacher resumed the lesson. Ariv headed to the front row, while I made my way to the back. Once seated, I noticed we were covering persuasive writing, based on what was written on the whiteboard. I pulled out my pen and flipped to the first page of my exercise book to start taking notes. As I focused on the front, I sensed someone watching me from the corner of my left eye. I turned my head to the left. "Is something up?" I asked Aya. "It's nothing," she replied quickly, jolting her head down towards her desk like she usually did. "I was just wondering why you were late, that's all." "Ah, well, Ariv got his blazer dirty, so I went to the front office with him to get it cleaned. Unfortunately, it was going to take some time to remove the huge coffee stain, so the office lady gave him a spare one to wear temporarily." "Oh, okay then." She accepted the excuse, still staring down at her desk. She took a couple of peeps at me, and I could tell she wanted to keep the conversation going, so I took the initiative. "So what do you think about the school? Have you made any friends yet?" She shook her head. The school's alright, I guess. I just sat at a bench by myself during recess, but I don't hate it." I thought that was sad, and I felt kind of sorry for her. I remembered her being like this in Canberra West High School. During breaks, I would see her sitting on a bench alone, eating her food. I didn't want her to keep being like that. "I think you should try befriending people in our class," I suggested. "Oh, sure," she unenthusiastically replied. I turned my attention to the rest of the classroom, and it occurred to me that this was actually the first time I'd taken a proper look at who my classmates were. Coincidentally, the teacher asked a question to the class and picked on students to answer. "Can anyone tell me, in your opinion, what is the best persuasive technique to use when convincing someone?" Immediately, a student in the front row raised their hand up. It was a girl with long brown hair and pale skin. Some parts of her hair were braided, and a white ribbon was tied to one of them. From the sound on her desk, she was from France. "Let me see," Miss Katsula said as she checked something, presumably a roll of students' names, on her desk. "Josephine Bernard?" She dropped her hand down to answer. The best persuasive technique is facts and statistical evidence because it's irrefutable, Josephine firmly answered. Wrong, said the girl at the desk to her left. She had long curly brown hair, fair skin, and twirled the ends of her hair with her right index finger while crossing one leg over the other. From the sign on her desk, she was from Morocco. The teacher checked the roll again. Iman at Mani, what would you like to say? Even after listening to facts, people are still too stubborn to change their viewpoint, Iman explained. Josephine turned her head to Iman. Oh yeah? Then what do you think the best persuasive technique is? She sharply asked with judgment. Emotional appeals, Iman smugly answered. Think about it. Fear, joy, love. These feelings are the true reasons why people are motivated to act in a certain way. The fear of plane crashes will still make you want to avoid them, even though you are more likely to die traveling by car than plane. The pleasure of will still make you want to even though you are more likely to develop a disease than non. Your love for someone will still persist, even if you're told that what you're feeling isn't love. The same can be applied to arguments. The best way to convince someone to believe something is by connecting a desirable positive feeling or an undesirable negative feeling, even if it's proven otherwise. Her argument was solid, but Josephine didn't agree. Then people shouldn't be considering feelings to accept an argument. They should be looking solely at the facts. And the fact is, feelings will hinder you from having the most logical opinion, she countered firmly. You have to appeal to human emotion if you want to successfully convince someone. Facts aren't enough, Iman stated. Seriously, is your closed-mindedness stopping you from using your brain properly? Ooh, other students voiced. Well, at least I don't sit like I have a stick shoved up my ass, Josephine retorted. Ooh, other students voiced again, but louder. Oh girl fight, one boy even said. The situation was getting tense, but the teacher eventually stepped in to put a stop to it. Alright, settle down the two of you, Miss Katsoulis firmly told them. They sat in silence. Still, I could sense there was tension. The teacher continued. Does anyone else have an opinion on what the best persuasive technique is? She scanned the classroom and zoomed in on a boy with shoulder-length brown hair and white skin, laying his chin on the desk. From the sign on his desk, he was from Argentina. How about you? Miss Katsoulis said, checking the roll once more. Gabriel Suarez? Me? He replied gloomily. He slowly lifted his head up and paused for a moment before answering. I think the best persuasive technique is anecdotal evidence. Once, when I was growing up, I brought an abandoned kitten home, but my mother refused to keep it because she said they were treacherous animals that were always up to no good. When I found the kitten, it looked like she was in trouble and needed my help. The kitten looked so innocent and she was already attached to me, so I kept her anyway without my mother knowing. Where was he going with this? However, one night I woke up to what sounded like a plate smashing, followed by my mother's scream. I rushed to the kitchen to investigate and found that the kitten was on the windowsill with a loaf of bread in her mouth. The kitten then leapt away and I never saw her again. I miss her. He laid his chin back on the desk and sniffled. The room fell awkwardly silent. Did he just convince us not to own a cat? Well, Miss Katsoulis said, breaking the silence. Thanks for the story time, I guess. I think I'll move on with the lesson now. Now that I've thought about it, there were a lot of peculiar students in our house. Maybe it was best to find friends for Aya in another house. Once the teacher was done with the lecture, we worked on writing a body paragraph about a currently pressing issue in our exercise books ourselves, and it was to be collected by the teacher at the end of period 2 so she could give us feedback. But as I was writing, from the corner of my right eye, I noticed Fala not doing his work at all. Instead, he was building a tower using school supplies he kept in his pencil case. For the base, he stabbed pencils on 4 erasers and positioned them all on the center of his desk. On top of that, he balanced every other school supply imaginable. Scissors, rulers, glue sticks, you named it, he was stacking it. Eventually, he stood on his toes to place the final pen on top, and it ended up being almost a meter tall. Yay, I did it, he excitedly exclaimed. To be honest, I was surprised. How was he able to balance the school supplies perfectly? It was commendable. Unfortunately, it wouldn't last long, as a nudge to his desk caused the tower to collapse and the school supplies to spread everywhere. In front of his desk stood the Danish boy, the same boy who criticized Fala for being in the starting 5. He had kicked the front corner leg of his desk. Hey, what was that for? Fala complained. You and I both damn well know you aren't smart enough to be here, let alone in the starting 5, the Danish boy said scornfully, especially considering what happened back in Canberra North. Wait, they both went to the same school? You're wrong, it's different now, Fala shouted. Different how? It looks like nothing has changed. You're still as dumb as ever. No, I'm not. I'll prove to you how smart I am, Fala replied, his eyes now brimming with tears. You better prove it then by doing well in the first game, the Danish boy continued. Otherwise, I'm protecting your position in the starting 5, and I'm sure others will side with me after witnessing your terrible performance. I couldn't let Fala keep being talked down like that, so I butted in. Hey, let's settle down a bit, okay? I interjected, standing up from my seat. Whatever, the Danish boy replied. I'm done talking with someone who is inferior to me anyway. He returned to his desk behind him, and I turned to Fala. Are you okay? I asked with concern. He lowered his head, and I could see the tears welling up in his eyes. He was holding them back. I know I'm good enough to be here, he muttered to himself. I had a feeling I now needed to worry about Fala performing well in the first game. The bell rang and it was the end of school. As our classmates packed up their belongings and began leaving the classroom, Ariv and I approached the teacher at a desk to talk about what had happened during recess. "Hey miss, who is that tall white guy with curly brown hair that stood next to Darwinia in the assembly?" I asked. "Ah, that would be Mr. Ezra," Miss Katsoulis answered. "Why, did he do something to you?" "During recess, a student from Darwinia threw coffee at me," Ariv explained. "And when I was about to do something about it was one way to put it. The man stepped in between us and stood there like he was threatening to hurt me," he continued. "Wow," Miss Katsoulis said. "I'm surprised he wasn't more hostile. He must have improved himself since last year." "Wait, what happened last year?" I asked. She paused for a moment, thinking, before brushing it off. Don't worry about it," she replied, waving me off. "Anyway, there has always been a strong rivalry between Darwinia and Eucalyptus, as we almost always face each other in the first round, and it's even more intense now that he's Turkish and I'm Greek, although we shouldn't let diplomatic tensions influence our behaviour towards someone. Or so I've been told." She muttered that last part under her breath, clearly annoyed. "Had they had a scuffle in the past? By the way," she continued, "I recommend the 5 of you to meet up and discuss your game plan for next week." "Huh? I thought you said we didn't have to study for it," I replied, confused. "Right," she confirmed, "but it's best that you boys get a feel of how each of you think. You all have different approaches on how you solve problems. For instance, as you've just told me, Ariv will immediately use to resolve a conflict." "Psst, no I don't," he muttered, crossing his arms and looking away, knowing at least to some degree that it was true. "I'll let you discuss more about it with the others." Did we really have different ways of solving problems? What was my approach? "Also, Lyam," Miss Katsoulis called, "I'm appointing you as captain of our house." This caught me off guard. "What? How come?" "Well, 'cause you're the most capable, of course," she said with a slight cheer. Ariv looked offended. "Are you saying I'm not capable?" he demanded. "That's not what I said," she replied firmly. "But you implied it." "That's not what I said." Ariv still gave her an annoyed look. The teacher turned her attention back to me. "Being a captain just means that if there is any indifference to how the starting 5 of the class decides things, then you ultimately have the final say." For some reason, the responsibility felt familiar. "Do you really think I have what it takes to be captain?" I curiously asked. "Sure, why not?" she replied confidently. "Well, it's a pretty big responsibility." "Look," Ariv cut in, "if you ever feel like you can't do it, then you can always give me the role instead." Wow, he was really desperate for captain, wasn't he? "Not in a million years," Miss Katsoulis said, shutting it down immediately. Ariv looked offended again, and I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. "You'll be fine," Miss Katsoulis assured me. "If I didn't think you were capable, then I never would have offered it to you." I thought about it for a moment. Did I really have what it takes to lead our house to victory? The teacher was staring at me in a way that practically demanded I accept the role. Eventually, I gave in. "If you say so, then I suppose I can be captain." "Great, it's settled then," she said. "Here's the captain's armband." She pulled out a blue armband from the pocket of her blazer and handed it to me. As I grabbed it, I felt the soft, elastic fabric in my hand. "I'm gonna go for a smoke now," she quickly added. "See ya." She gathered her belongings from her desk and strolled towards the exit of the classroom, leaving us behind. Now that I thought about it, our teacher was kind of lousy. Once Ariv and I grabbed our bags from our lockers, we headed to the front office to retrieve his blazer and return the one he borrowed. "Here you go," the office lady said, holding his blazer out over the counter. "Good as new." "Thanks," he replied. As he extended his hand out to take it, she pulled it back. You need to pay up first," she informed. "Are you serious?" he snapped. "You didn't mention it to me before." "Hey, cleaning isn't free, you know." Ariv was clearly annoyed by the hidden fee, but he gave in. "Fine." The fee was $50, so he slammed a $50 note on the counter. Once the office lady verified it, she held the blazer out to him again, and Ariv snatched it from her hands. "Unbelievable," he muttered, turning away from the counter as he slipped the blazer on. The office lady slammed the countertop window, and shouting followed almost immediately. "Hey ladies, I just conned someone out of $50. Looks like we're getting drinks tonight. Woohoo!" The others cheered. Did they really just swindle him for money? How shameless could they be? Ariv and I left the school together through the front gate and soon reached the halfway point of the bridge passing over the highway in the front of the school, heading towards our apartments. I decided to make some small talk so that I could get to know him more. "So what do you think of the school so far?" I asked. "It's stupid," he said angrily. "Why did the top students get to be in one house? Why didn't I make it in?" To be accepted into Flora High School, students had to take several tests measuring their athletic and academic abilities. This was to ensure they could perform physically and mentally at a satisfactory level in all aspects, preventing strictly smart or strictly athletic students from attending. The tests were rigorous. They ranged from school subject related tests such as English and mathematics to physical tests such as running and swimming. To determine the top 14% of students assigned to the accelerated house, I assumed students' test results were ranked in each test, and an average rank was calculated once all the tests were completed. I thought I did really well in the tests, Arif continued. It's going to be impossible for us to win the money. Well, I believe that being here still means there is still a chance, I said optimistically, gazing up at the sky. After all, why not just hand the money to the accelerated students if they were going to win anyway? Probably because they wouldn't make more money if there was no event. But still, my point was, why give us an opportunity to compete in the first place? By the way, I said, changing the subject, what school did you transfer from? Canberra North. And you? Canberra West. He was now the third person I knew that attended that school. So do you know anything about our classmates then? I continued. Particularly that Flora person. You mean that boy from Guinea? Yeah, we did go to the same school. But sorry, I don't know too much about him since we were in different classes. It was a big school. Well, how about the other student that picks on him? I heard he went there too. Do you know why he does it? Oh, that guy? His name is Mikel Oddison. From what I've heard, when we ran a mock Flora games last year, Flora was in the same class as him, and it was his fault that their class lost in the first round. Ever since then, Mikel had been beating him up for it. Whoa, really? What did he do to make their class lose? Maybe I really did have to worry about Flora performing well in the first game. Speaking of classmates, what's up with that Daniel guy? Ariv asked. I was curious what he meant by that. Why, did he do something to you? Not exactly, he just doesn't seem like someone who'd try, he explained. During the 10-minute break between period 2 and 3, he accidentally bumped shoulders with another guy while walking past him at the locker area. The guy was like, "Hey, watch where you're going, Chinese boy." But Daniel just paused, looked over his shoulder and told him, "I'm half Kazakh," before walking away. No argument, no reaction, nothing. That did sound like a weird encounter. Also, him being half Kazakh explained why he had blonde hair and a non-Chinese sounding first name. Yeah, he went to the same school as me, but I don't know much about him either. He always went by unnoticed. Well, he better not be a nuisance in the games, he said. To my knowledge, he had never caused trouble at Canberra West High School, but who knows, he could be. Also, Arif continued, the girl you were with at the canteen, are you friends with her? He had to be talking about Alina. Yeah, I guess you can say we are. I mean, we only met today. Wait, today? He asked, surprised as we halted near the end of the bridge. What if her being friends with you is just a way to affect your performance in the games? I doubt it, I said, reassuring him. We met in the morning, well before we were chosen to be in the starting 5. Ariv still looked skeptical. Still though, you should be careful. You never know what some people's true intentions are. There was no way Alina could have known that she and I would already be in the starting 5 before school started, and there was no way she would purposely bump into me just to get close to me and sabotage my performance. She was sweet and genuine. I remembered the time we smiled at each other after exchanging phone numbers. It felt intimate. This also reminded me of something. Hey, let's exchange phone numbers, I suggested, just in case we need to send important messages to each other. Yeah, alright. We each pulled out our phones and recited our phone numbers. Once we saved them in our contacts, we made eye contact again and I smiled at him. Great, I'm glad to have made another friend, I said cheerfully. 12 minutes later, Ariv and I arrived at the Flora Village, a residential complex built specifically for the Flora Games to accommodate all the student representatives. Several rectangular buildings, each ranging from 6 to 10 stories high, filled the suburb. Grey footpaths wove seamlessly between them, making it easy for students to travel around. Sections of the dark grey building's exterior were carefully accented with the 7 house colours, blending together in a cohesive design. Filling the suburb spaces were neatly trimmed grass and large green trees, creating a spacious, open atmosphere. It was amazing. Ariv and I walked along one of the footpaths, and we happened to reach my apartment building first. Well, this is my stop, I said to Ariv. I'll see you tomorrow, yeah? Yeah, see ya, he replied, still with a mad look on his face. He should really smile once in a while. We waved goodbye to each other as we split up. I stepped towards the automatic sliding door entrance of the building as he continued walking down the footpath, soon turning a corner so that I couldn't see him anymore. Once I was in the lobby, I exchanged pleasantries with the nice receptionist lady at the counter. Good afternoon, sir. How are you today? She greeted politely. I'm good, thanks. How are you? I'm good too. If you need any assistance, please don't hesitate to ask. Will do. The receptionist lady always closed off the conversation with asking if I needed assistance. She was like a robot. Nevertheless, I never needed any help from her until this point, but I was sure she'd be extremely helpful if I did. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor and arrived at my apartment, using my student ID card to unlock the door. Once I was inside, I immediately dropped my backpack on the dark carpet floor and laid back on my bed to rest. Finally! The apartment was cozy. There was a main room spacious enough to include a double bed, bedside table, study desk, mini fridge, and tall shelf. In the bathroom, there was a stand-up shower in one corner, a toilet in the other corner, and a sink and mirror in between. There was also a short balcony connecting to the main room looking over the village. Still, the apartment was plain. I didn't bother to change the colours of the white bed sheets, hang up pictures on the white walls, or place objects other than school books on the black bedside table and shelf. It mostly looked the same as when I arrived in the first place. So much has happened today, but at least I can relax for now. I drifted off to sleep without changing out of my uniform yet. For some reason though, I dreamed about Alina. The encounter we had this morning, her soft hands, her beautiful smile, she was dreamy. "Do you wanna kiss me?" she embarrassingly asked as she twirled her hair. "Yes, please." She leaned in for the kiss and her pink juicy lips moved closer to my face. I seriously couldn't wait to taste them. I shut my eyes and leaned in for the kiss too. As we were about to touch lips, I was interrupted by a buzzing sound. Zzz, zzz. What was that? I woke up from my nap. The noise was coming from my pants. It was my phone vibrating. Aw man. I pulled out my phone from my pocket to check it. To my surprise, it was a call from Ariv. He had only received my number not too long ago. Why was he calling now? I swiped my finger on the screen and held the phone to my ear to answer. Hello? Liam, he called desperately. I need help. It sounded urgent. I sat straight on my bed. What's wrong? I'm being blackmailed, he frantically explained. And if I don't do anything about it, then I'll be expelled from the school. What? I exclaimed in shock. How on earth was that possible in such a short time frame? Tell me everything that happened right now. Once Ariv turned a corner so that I couldn't see him anymore, he continued walking down the footpath towards his apartment building. Suddenly, a black cat shrieked and darted out of an alleyway, knocking his chest before sprinting across the footpath to the other side. Hey, what's your problem? He yelled as the cat disappeared. He looked irritated, but he let out a sigh and brushed it off. Today's such an unlucky day, he muttered to himself. He focused back ahead. As he was about to walk past the alleyway, a force pulled him in by his right arm, and he was instantly pinned against the wall by the collar of his shirt. What the? He lifted his head up to see who was pinning him, and to his shock, it was Mr. Ezra, the same teacher he had encountered at the canteen. What do you want? Ariv snapped. The teacher smirked. What I want is for your house to flunk the first game, he said, narrowing his eyes in an intimidating manner. Yeah? And why should I do that? Because if you don't, then I'll report you to the school coordinators that you were Sadia at the canteen. Impossible! That didn't happen! Ariv exclaimed. That's a lie! Oh, you think so? Mr. Ezra slyly asked. Because I was there and I saw it. Ariv stared in disbelief at how far he was willing to go to slander him. Well, it doesn't matter! It's still your word against mine! Not exactly, Mr. Ezra replied, turning his head to the left. At the same time, someone entered the alleyway. It was Sadia, the same girl who had spilled the drink on him. What are you doing here? Ariv asked. Sadia unrolled the right sleeve of her blazer, revealing a bruise on her forearm. You did this to me. What? No, I didn't, Ariv denied. Yes, you did, she replied. When I report this to the school coordinators with Mr. Ezra's vouch, you will get expelled. Everyone saw you swing, Mr. Ezra added, so it would be very easy to convince them that you did hurt her. Ariv was mad. He couldn't do anything. He felt powerless in this situation. Eventually, the teacher let go of his collar, and he fell to his knees. The teacher chuckled. Let's get out of here, Mr. Ezra told Sadia. They stepped towards the exit of the alleyway. Once they were on the footpath, the teacher paused. Remember, flunk the first game, he reminded Ariv, his back turned to him. The teacher and Sadia split up in opposite directions of the footpath, soon walking far enough that Ariv couldn't see them anymore. Ariv stayed on the floor. He didn't know what to do, so he called me. No, that can't be right, I said softly with sympathy. His situation was absolutely unfair. I've worked so hard to get here, Ariv said, distraught. I need your help, Liam. I don't want to get kicked out. Please. He was on the verge of breaking down, and I couldn't bear to hear him like this. Eventually, his desperation influenced my final decision. Okay, I'll help you, I said. We'll have to tell Miss Katsoulis first thing tomorrow morning.